Dana Robinson. Welcome to Plumpy, Thimble. One of the unique aspects about Halloween is that you get kids coming to your door, and it's completely acceptable for you to scare them as much as you possibly can. Now, there's a fine balance to this. I learned this a few years ago when I got a really good Grim Reaper costume, glowing red eyes, and I got a knock on the door, and I swung it open, blaring Phantom of the Opera, no face, just red eyes, completely dark cloak, and I scared a 3-year-old princess who fell backwards and clung to her dad's leg. And so I've been a little bit more cautious in the years following. Now, granted, it is the job of the trick-or-treaters to startle you. I mean, this isn't always the case, but you want to see a good costume, something that can, sort of shock you when you open the door. It doesn't always happen. Generally, it's about the cuteness of the unique costume idea, and so there's not a whole lot in terms of something that will frighten you when it comes to your door. Now, we're looking at a game today, and it's a very cutesy little game, but the premise is that these monsters that come to your door to trick-or-treat are in actuality miniature versions of real monsters. There's a mummy, there's Dracula, there's an invisible man, and there's a werewolf. And the premise of this game is that a witch has shrunk them, and not only shrunk them, but has turned them into little children that are now going door to door to trick-or-treat for candy. And they're not cute little kids that are dressed up, they are just miniature versions of themselves. Because today we're looking at the very cute Scream or Die. Now, calling this a cute little game I think is appropriate because, one, it is very cutesy. The art I think it's dead on for what it's going for. And two, it is a very light game. It's a light dice chucking game where you're just trying to get 13 points, and you get those points by rolling a number of dice. Now, when you roll those dice, what you're hoping to see is a picture of your character, the character that you've chosen, appear on those dice faces. And it seems very surface level at that. And like I said, it's not a very deep game, but there's enough in this game to where you can manipulate those dice that it makes it a little bit interesting. So the currency of the game are these Scream tokens. And the way that these tokens work is that they're basically money to get you to have other players manipulate the dice that they roll. And so when it's your turn, you draw 5 dice out of the bag. And different colored dice help your particular character more than others. So there's each character has one die, one color of die that is the best for them. There's more of their faces on that die than the other ones. And then there's 2 different colored die that is okay, it's got one of their face, and then there's one die that is the worst, that their face won't pop up on it. So that's something that going in. The player boards are really helpful. They tell you which dice you want to see pulled out of the bag. So if it's your turn, you draw 5 dice out of the bag. Then everybody gets a chance to spend their screams, their little currencies, and they can spend however much they want going around in a circle, starting with one player, he pays, and then the next player. And if you don't see the dice that you're looking for, you can pay a scream to have the player draw another die out of the bag, and so on and so forth. Then, after the player rolls, everybody else gets a chance to take another turn. And this gives them the opportunity to spend screams to re-roll. So say you got one of your really good die, the one that's best for you, but it rolled not your face. You can pay a scream and have them re-roll that. But every other player has the opportunity to do the same thing. There's also there's scream symbols on the dice, and that's how you accrue currency. So when it's your turn and you're rolling, you have a chance to get more screams. So when it's not your turn, you can pay to manipulate the dice on somebody else's turn. That's it. The first player to 13 points wins the game. Not super heavy at all. It's a very light game, and there is a ton of luck in it. You can mitigate it though with the Scream tokens, which is something that's unique to this type of game, and it allows a little bit of necessary manipulation that you're going to want in a game that is just a dice chucker. And so the fact that you are having to compete against, you've got to decide which dice you want to have re-rolled. You want to decide if it's worth it to spend your screams to have the dice roller, the person whose turn it is, pull more out of the bag. There's a lot more thought process behind your decisions in this game than you might initially think. Now, 2 players, it's really interesting because each player controls 2 separate monsters, and so you have to, determine which dice you're going to roll, because you want to advance one faster than the other. You don't want both to advance at the same speed because you're going to lose that way. Four players works really well too, because each player has an individual monster, and it works. I mean, it just, with four players, you've got every dynamic possible where each monster has dice that work the best and dice that work the least best. I get dice that work the worst for them. Now, I think 3 player is probably the worst player count. It's still a fun dice game. It's fine. It's not the best thing in the world, but the problem with 3 is specifically, you've got your little diagram of which dice work best for people. And you'll notice for this character, blue works really well, and then for this character, blue still works okay. But the problem comes in with Harry. So both of these people might be fine with blue dice being rolled, but Harry, unfortunately, he's never going to get a chance to score with that blue die. So it's really kind of stacked against him. At the same time, though, it kind of evens itself out a little bit in that both these characters are okay with yellow, and Griff, for instance, does not get anything from yellow. So, I mean, that's the problem with the player boards, but it's really not a huge problem because it's just a slight issue because, yeah, it works itself out for the most part in the end, and at the same time, it's a short game. It's not something you're going to be spending a lot of brain power on. Honestly, it was a great sort of calm down, cool down game to play. We played it after we played Dead of Winter, a long 2-hour game of Dead of Winter. Afterwards, we pulled this out, we played a couple games of this, and it really helped us kind of unwind. So if you're looking for pros and cons, pros, it's quick, it's easy, it's a pretty fun game. And if you want to chuck a lot of dice, these dice are big and chunky, and that's kind of fun. It's almost got this poker element where you're tossing your chips in to, pull more dice or re-roll certain dice, which really kind of can get on the other player's nerves, especially if you're having them re-roll a dice that would have been one of their points. Cons, it's very light. I mean, this game is, it's a filler to the max, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to know that going into this game, that there is not a ton of strategy behind this. But it's a nice game that you can talk over, you can kind of just take it easy, you can turn your brain off, but still have that competition and conversation, which is nice. But yeah, know what you're getting into when you take a look at this game. Overall, the theme works perfectly with it. It's a cute little game, and it was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe. We will see you next time. Thanks.